Now, folks, as you probably are aware that the elections are coming, very obvious. We have been listening and hearing to a number of them. One of them was at the show, of course, the Premier, Jeremy Rockcliffe. Now, what's the other side of it? That they do make promises, they make commitments. What can be done? How will they be done? Now, for me, an insider to all of this and looking at it from a totally different angle is, of course, Ruth Forrest, the member for Murchison in the Legislative Council. Ruth, welcome.
So it's always a pleasure to chat.
Had a good time on King Island?
I had a beautiful time, but it was very challenging to see how dry it is. I've been there a lot of times, as you know, Wade, and I've never seen it like this, and I fully appreciate the really tough circumstance that's putting farmers and everyone on the island in. It's not just the farmers, I guess, but they're feeling it the most. So, yeah, I had a lovely time. It was really nice to catch up with lots of people, but I do appreciate the enormous pressure that residents of King Island are facing at the moment.
Because as you said, talking to quite a few people, what did you notice mostly? It's like besides the dry and the drought, of course, but any other thing that sort of came up that you thought, hey, need to look at it?
Yeah, the key thing is the perennial problem of the shipping. Now, I appreciate that State Growth have been doing some work, trying to work with TasPorts. TasPorts are not easy to work with for a lot of people. I hear that not just from King Island, I hear it from Flinders Island as well as others, and trying to get a more reliable, if you like, service for shipping to get cattle off and also food and fodder on. And I think it just, again, has highlighted that perennial problem that we actually need a triangulated service. This is nothing new, but I think the drought and the really serious challenges we're facing highlight that even more so. So now is the time the government needs to really look at, and any party seeking the vote of people later in March, that they call for a really serious look at not only the lack of a triangulated service, but also a suitable vessel that is more reliable. Because we know the John Dyken has interrupted sailings, and that impacts on the other vessels like Eastern Line Shipping and others that are accessing the port, making it even more difficult sometimes. So we do need to have more meaningful discussions, not just pushing it off onto the back burner that we seem to have seen from this government for the last 10 years.
But then they, in their election promise, the Liberal Party promises $150,000 for a viability study on the harbour, on the port, on the extensions. Where does $150,000 go? And so much work has been done on this.
This is the thing, Wade. There's been a review. State Growth have been doing a review into the regulation of our ports, and it's quite an extensive review. It was supposed to be completed in December 2023. It's still not completed. I understand it's not far away. And obviously the election being called means that everything stops in that regard. So if that approach is going to be taken, that's going to spend $150,000 to do another review of the port, well, we know actually what needs to happen. It seems like just another delaying tactic. It's not like we don't know what we need. Yes, you need to look at the various options for the port for making it more serviceable, ideally making it all-weather, safe harbour. Also working with King Island Shearlight, or Group 6 Metal, that are right next door with overburden available soon, not quite yet, but soon there will be. I think rather than just doing review after review after review, let's do a quick look at this and get on with fixing the port and making it what it needs to be.
And then Ruth Forrest keeps asking in the Legislative Council and the Minister and pressing, and can finally the ambulance service get the hydro building? It is empty. They need facilities. We have elections. Bang. Here's $5 million, folks.
Yes. Well, $5 million, we're not quite sure to do what. That's great. We should never look a gift horse in the mouth, right? But obviously the ambulance, the volunteers and the community paramedics that have been effectively promised for some time now, just the time frame's been uncertain. We absolutely need a decent facility for our volunteers as well as any community paramedics that are engaged. I know that Liberals have also committed to the two community paramedic positions, which the island clearly needs and have needed for some time. So whether it's at the hospital on a purpose-built facility or whether we can repurpose the hydro building for them and the SES volunteers, because I understand there's room there. It would take some work, but I'll probably take a bit less than $5 million, Wade. And so we could use that other money to support our volunteers in other ways.
Well, we don't know yet, of course, what has been decided there. There could be also that accommodation being included. There could be the wages for the community paramedics. There's a lot of possibilities there, of course.
We could build some houses for them to live in.
Yeah, for example.
So that's the thing. We need to do it in the most economical way, acknowledging the high building costs on King Island, and that, obviously that goes with the high freight costs. But we need to think, well, how can we $5 million is good and welcome, but how can we get the best bang for our buck to benefit our ambulance volunteers and community paramedics when we get them, and our SES volunteers in particular?
Now, you mentioned the word a few times, and I had a few questions recently where people said, what is a community paramedic?
Yeah, it's a good question. Right. A community paramedic, or just a step back for a moment, a paramedic is actually the only health professional that's actually trained to work in the community. They go out in ambulances, they assist people in the community, and they mostly transport them to hospital or some other health facility. So a community paramedic is one that doesn't just work in an ambulance, going to people's homes or the scene of an accident or something like that. They can also work in the hospital. So they actually create another avenue of health professional to work in the hospital. They can also assist, say, at the mine and places like that, and be involved in their planning for emergency management and that sort of thing as well. So they can actually work more broadly across the health sector. So rather than mostly being confined to responding to emergency calls in the ambulance, they can provide care in the hospital setting as well. So it's helpful to actually have that extra highly trained health professional available to support the nursing staff and the medical staff there.
Now, Premier Rockcliffe said to me on Tuesday at the King Island show, when I asked him about the promises they made when they form a majority government, which is, of course, a question. I asked him, I said, how do you go with that financially? Is the Treasury aware, or is it all fundable? And he said, yes, we are the government. Yes, it is all fundable. Doesn't it raise the question then with people like yourself who have asked a lot of questions on behalf of King Island in the Legislative Council, where you think, how on a sudden now today is this all possible then, and there is funding and it can be done?
Yeah, so why wasn't it done 10 years ago or 5 years ago? I agree, Wade. But also, we know that the last election it cost a significant amount of money. I think it was $1.4 billion from memory, on top of the current budget deficit, or the net debt situation we're in. And this is one thing the government and opposition too are not talking about. You can make all these promises you like, and whether or not you're in majority government, I think that the likelihood of that happening is quite remote for either party. But you can make all those promises you like, and if you're required to follow through on them, that will add to the debt position that the state actually is in. And so over time, that will mean that the higher servicing costs, the debt servicing costs, which mean the bucket of money available for delivering services is less. There's no other way to do it, Wade. This is the thing. And so we do need to have a conversation about the bigger challenge facing the state, and that's the management of the state's debt, the repayment of that, the management of our financial position more broadly, because there's many reports on the Treasury site, on Tasmanian Treasury's website, that clearly outlines the challenges for us. So you can promise the world, but ultimately we've got to pay for it, and unless the federal government are going to step in and give us even more money, then we're going to be in a very difficult situation where you have to cut services or raise more revenue.
Well, it's like when I asked that question about the deficit, and I said, well, we seem to be in a bad situation, and I know that you spend a fair bit of time on the whole budgets and the financial situation in Tasmania. The answer I received was straight away, well, compared with the other states, our deficit is minimum. It's nothing.
That's not true. The only other state that's in a more difficult position as far as their net debt per capita goes is Victoria, and they are in a world of pain in terms of their budget situation. But the rest, we're the next one after that. And we have such a heavy reliance on the Commonwealth for our income and for the money we get back through the GST and other grants. That puts us in a more vulnerable position because we just don't have the capacity, unless we make significant change, to raise our own revenues, to increase the amount of money we've got available to use as we wish. We see that both parties wanting to take more and more out of our government businesses. If you take more out of your government business for some purpose, it means there's less to come back to the government through dividends that do support our health and education. So you can't have it both ways.
But how do we then deal with it? Say, for instance, you do the right thing as a government where you say, let's get rid or minimise our deficit. At the same time, we want to do something about housing shortage, more jobs. We want to improve the health system in the state, all the issues that we have. Where do we get that funding from? Where can we save then? Do we get more royalties from the mines or salmon farms or?
These are the conversations we actually need to have, but it's not just about how the state could potentially get more revenue, but it's about a bigger picture discussion around the federal-state relations and how that all works. We saw some significant change to the GST distribution process a few years ago that might put Tasmania in a worse position. The federal government at the time was forced into a position, not just by Tasmania, but particularly by Tasmania and other states, to be provided with a no worse off guarantee. I noticed the federal government have lengthened that out from, I think it was 2026, 27 when it was due to finish, out to 2030. So there's still a bit more time to work on that. But I think as a nation, we need to have a conversation about this because it's not, as I said, Wade, it's not just us that's in this situation with lots of debt. Victoria's worse off than us, and the others are not as bad, but they've still got a lot of debt.
So now we're into the election campaigning, halfway almost, they're coming to halfway. Your whole look at it so far, what you've seen, how do you look at it?
I find it fairly frustrating that we're seeing sort of very populist politics and policies being put forward. From the Liberal side, things they could have done years ago, and this is what we're talking about here with the review of the harbour, or Grassy Harbour, and the ambulance facility. The Labor Party haven't made any promises, as far as I'm aware of, on the King Island yet. Maybe they're keeping their powder dry, but pre-polls started, so they need to start talking about King Island. And to me, the way I look at it, there won't be a majority of either party, and whichever party it is who has the most members will be, I guess, this is a matter for the governor to determine who she asks to form government, and they're going to have to work with people. They're going to have to work with people who may not share or align with their set of values or the way they want to do things. So there's going to have to be negotiation, which makes my job in the upper house even more important, to try and say, well, what deals are being done behind the scenes here that got us to here. So the job of the upper house will become it already is important, but it'll become more important in this regard. But I don't think there's going to be a clear winner for some time. And also with this increasing size of Parliament, it's going to be perhaps even a little bit more messy, if you like. But, I mean, the people of Tasmania are smart. They know who they want. They vote for who they want. And then it's up to the members who are elected to work out how they're going to work together and get the best outcome for all the people, not for themselves or just their electorate, for example.
So you're almost saying that increasing the number of seats from 25 to 35 in the parliament is almost like it makes it harder then almost for a party to form a majority government? Is that sort of what you're saying?
Not necessarily harder, but I think this particular time where there's been a very significant degree of loss of trust in politics generally. There's been a lot of undermining of that confidence that the mainstream politics and the mainstream parties can deliver what the community need. We've seen people move away from major parties, not just here, but in other states and obviously federally. And we've seen people being a bit tired of the sniping and the muzzling that we see go on from the major parties. So I think people have a view, from what I'm hearing around, that they're not really sure still, a lot of them, who they're going to vote for. They don't know quite where to start, but they say we need some change. Well, what is that change going to look like? So I think it's the lack of confidence in our political system at the moment, which is sad. It has fallen away, not just here, but in other states as well. We've seen the chaos, you might say, that our parliament descended into in the last little while after the two Liberal members quit and sat on the crossbench independents, and we saw all sorts of chaos, I guess you'd have to say, and we lost the government lost three pretty senior, or four actually, senior and significant members since the last election. They lost the Premier himself, Peter Gutwin, they lost Sarah Courtenay, they lost Jacob Petrusma, and they lost Elise Archer. All seasoned, effective and senior ministers. So we've ended up with the government having the bottom of the barrel to bring people to the top. So the benefit of having a larger parliament, which means you're going to have more people there to choose from. There's going to be more, I would imagine, more backbenchers wanting to take those positions in the ministry and perhaps putting more pressure on the ministers to perform well and get things done. You'll also have greater capacity for committee work. That's always a bit of a challenge to get lower house members available for committee work when there's so few of them. Few backbenchers and a lot of committee work that needs to be done.
So with all the promises and commitments that the Liberal Party has made so far, for King Island, for Bredon, but for King Island in particular, and saying that this all depends on a majority government, with now the idea of it's going to be very difficult to probably have a majority government, those promises, we shouldn't count on too much yet, is it?
I just think I've noticed all these significant promises come with that caveat if they're elected in majority. I mean, whatever the people of Tasmania decide, the government of the day, whoever's in power after this election, will need to work with the communities they represent. And these issues that are really important to King Island are not going away. So whether or not it's a majority Liberal, Labor or a minority government or whatever a makeup, these things need attention. I will continue to fight for them. This is what I've been fighting for some time, and I don't give up, mate. You probably know that. And I think there are other things also that perhaps have been overlooked in this, particularly like mental health support for people on King Island facing really challenging times at the moment that seem to have slipped below the radar. I mean, we know that Rural Life and Well's coming to the island. They'll be there next week. People can ring and make an appointment with them. But they haven't got adequate funding to provide this service. And so what I want to hear from the government is commitment to funding Rural Life and Well adequately to ensure they can turn up not just now, not just next week or next month when we know that the rain is unlikely to come, but afterwards, because it's after the rains come when the grass starts to grow again that farmers are in even more difficult circumstance sometimes because they've got sold off a lot of their stock. They don't have the breeding stock they did have. And you can't feed too many stock on the grass when it grows because they get the rye staggers, and so the farmers know that. And that can be a really challenging time. They might have sold at low prices, even coming off a good year or a good couple of years they've had. They'll sell now at lower prices. The cost of restocking is significant, and they may not have the wherewithal to do it.
Now, during the King Island Show Day on Tuesday, we had 6 or 7 Liberal members here, members from the Liberal Party. Any of the other parties, and as we speak right now, I haven't heard a single word from any of the other parties of anybody coming across the King Island. Does that surprise you?
It does, Wade. In fact, I found it a little. When Anne Urquhart was there on behalf of the Labor Party, I guess, but she's in the federal parliament, not up for election. So Anne is a regular visitor to the island. I was disappointed to see that no Labor members or candidates were on the island. I mean, obviously they have competing interests and competing demands, but King Island is a really important contributor to our state. The show is one event where a lot of the community turn up, and it was a really good turn up. It was good weather, sadly no rain, but good weather for a show, and they didn't have a presence there. So I don't know. I don't understand how the parties organise their schedules, but let's hope that they have good representation over there the next couple of weeks, so they can actually hear from the people what they need, rather than just glossing over it or not even committing anything to King Island. Because why would you vote for them if they haven't even recognised you?
No, I'm sure you don't want to bet, but any idea who's going to win?
The polls have changed a bit in recent times. I mean, how many polls can you read, and how many do you believe, and how accurate are they? I just think we'll have a bit of a complex situation. It'll take a little while to work through. I think the chance of the Liberal Party having a slightly larger number of members than the Labor Party would I understand. I'm not an expert in this at all, Wade, but I understand the Governor would ask current Premier, Premier Rockcliffe, to form government with whoever he can to get confidence and supply. If he couldn't do that, then she would offer it to the opposition, as I understand it. So I think it might be, in my view, it's unlikely to be a majority government, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's good to work together on things and have a contest of ideas where you're not bound by that party position no matter what. If you've got people there who aren't members of a particular party that forms government, then they're going to have to shift and move a bit, and hopefully we'll get better policy outcomes as a result.
Let's jump a little bit forward in time. It's May, June 2024, and we're in the Legislative Council, and Ruth Forrest says, I have absolutely nothing to ask about King Island anymore. Anything we ask for is all fixed and organised. Is that a dream or a reality?
Probably more a dream, mate. Particularly, and I say that in all fairness, because the port, if there is work to be done on the port, and even particularly if we look at the use of overburden for the mine, that probably won't be quite ready till 2025. So, but in any event, if we can get some serious commitments to these things and confirmed commitments after the election that these things will happen, it doesn't mean I'll take my foot off the pedal or ease back on it, because these things can be committed to and then take forever to be delivered, or sometimes slip under the radar if people don't keep a watching brief on them. So these things are really important. The shipping, a decent vessel that's more reliable. I know Bass Online tell me they're very reliable, but a triangulated service, and real attention to that. And then the ambulance facility and the 2 paramedics, community paramedics on the island, I'll be a lot happier then. And we also need to focus on avenues to build more housing and that sort of thing on the island, because that's crucial too for the future of the island.
I'm sure it's going to take a little while before we can put the King Island vehicle on cruise control, but in the meantime, Ruth Forrest, we thank you for your time.
Thanks, Wade. It's always a pleasure.